Hi everyone, and welcome to Module 5. In this module, we're going to be considering quantitative methodologies. For some of you, this is very comfortable territory, and for others, it definitely isn't, and I probably fit in the second category. However, I'm happy to say that the readings this module will add to your understanding, the readings in this module will add to your understanding of quantitative research and enable us to be more knowledgeable consumers of quantitative research. So in Module 5, you'll be reading Creswell and Guterman, who consider collecting quantitative data in Chapter 5, and then explore analyzing and interpreting data in Chapter 6. The videos will reinforce the information in Creswell and Guterman, and for those of us for whom statistics is unfamiliar territory, they'll be useful. All of these readings are going to be very helpful in thinking through what do we mean by quantitative analysis? How is it that we can think that through? But whether we do this kind of research or not, this is the kind of research that we will encounter often in our professional work as we look at various issues that may arise in educational settings. In terms of the assignments for Module 5, there will be the Forum 5 discussion group. As usual, you'll have a question to respond to in the forum, with the expectation that you'll draw from the literature in both your initial response and responses to your colleagues in relation to the question. You'll also be doing a second set of annotations and a synthesis of 7 of the 12 readings you will have annotated by then in Parts 1 and Parts 2. So for more information about the assignment, please become familiar with the description and rubric for the assignment. And as you know, you can find that in Submit Your Assignments when you go to the name of the assignment. And in addition, underneath where you find all that information, there is a video posted with more information for the assignment. You'll find it posted right beneath where you submit your assignment for the annotated bibliography part 2 and synthesis. And it will kind of flesh out some of the information about the assignment and hopefully answer some of your questions. And as always, if you have questions, please ask, and please ask sooner rather than later. And don't wait to wonder about something until after you've handed in your assignment. And then, you may be not upset, that's probably too strong a word, but wondering about something and then realize that it's in that information. So please make sure that you get familiar with that information, and please ask questions. The more questions, the better. Okay, so let's think about what is quantitative research. Well, we already know quite a bit from Creswell and Guterman, as well as some of its philosophical underpinnings from Guba and Lincoln. We've learned that it's systematic, as in any kind of research. All kinds of research is systematic in a certain kind of way. But quantitative research is organized in a very particular way and provides a highly systematic approach to the gathering and analysis of data. Second, it's empirical. That is, it's based on observable phenomena. So we're talking about social phenomena only as they can be demonstrated by, or natural phenomena, only as they can be demonstrated by what can be seen and quantified. Because it depends on quantifiable data and its analysis, researchers use statistical, mathematical, or computational techniques or methods, which your readings will discuss. It also begins with a hypothesis that is either confirmed or disconfirmed in the research process. As we've learned, this is a different approach to qualitative research, in that qualitative research either comes to a hypothesis as in grounded theory, or its goal is understanding a question that has been raised, and the research helps us to understand, but it cannot be confirmed in the same way that quantitative research is able to do. And fifth, it's objective in the sense that the researcher tries through various strategies to separate him or herself from the process in which they're engaged and the phenomena that they're exploring. Arguably, this is always an incomplete process, but as much as is possible, using accepted strategies such as blind studies and so on, the researcher attempts to separate themselves from the phenomenon under examination. For example, Creswell and Guterman talk about developing questions for surveys, etc. But some would argue that such a process can never be entirely removed from the beliefs and values of the researcher, or the research team, or the funder, or what have you. So while objectivity is the goal, and many strategies enable objective practices, it is arguably never absolute. So in that sense, it's not entirely separated in terms of objective and subjective from qualitative data or qualitative analysis. And last, it examines relationships between variables. And I'll be talking about that more in a minute in a very cursory way, but just as an introduction. So what is quantitative research and how does it help us to understand social phenomena and natural phenomena? Well, all of these characteristics of quantitative research are what it is and are also how it helps us to understand various phenomena in education and other social contexts. The readings and videos provide a look at some of the issues that need to be addressed in statistical analysis. For example, Creswell and Guterman point out in Chapter 6 that there are two main types of statistical analysis, descriptive and inferential statistics. So what are descriptive and inferential statistics that are key tools in quantitative research? Well, I'd like you to look at a very short video that will introduce us to both.
Welcome to the first statistics lecture. Because this is the first lecture, we're going to be starting off with some of the most basic concepts, and right now I'm going to teach you about descriptive and inferential statistics. So first of all, what is statistics? Well, statistics is the science of collecting, organizing, and analyzing data. Data being facts or pieces of information. Now I'm going to give you 3 examples of data, like the ages of students in your statistics class, or the genders of the last 8 people to walk by, or even 5 randomly measured IQ scores. Basically, any information you can collect is data, and then you'll eventually do math with that or something. So when people talk about statistics, they're usually talking about 2 main divisions. There's descriptive statistics and inferential statistics. Descriptive statistics consist of organizing and summarizing data, while inferential statistics consist of using the data you've measured to form conclusions, usually about other data. Now I'm going to give you an example of these 2 things. So let's say there are 20 statistics classes at your university, and you've collected the ages of the students in one class. And right below I have, 15 ages that you have hypothetically collected from different people in your class. A descriptive question that could be asked about this data is, what's the most common age of student in your statistics class? Which, in this case would be 18 because you have the most 18s out of everything. And an inferential question that could be asked about this data is, are the ages of the students in this classroom similar to what you would expect in a normal statistics class at this university? See that the first one is just asking us to describe data, while the second one is asking an additional question about that data. Now, the data you get will be drawn from either populations or samples, usually samples, but I'm going to explain both. Now, the population is the group that you're interested in studying, and the sample is a subset of that population. Basically, your sample comes from the population as shown in the diagram below. So let's say you want to find the average GPA of a student at your university. Your university has 20,000 students, and you randomly select 100 of them and ask them what their GPA is. In this case, the group that you're interested in studying, your population, is that 20,000 students, and your sample is that smaller group of 100 students that you've taken from the population. And for the first video, that's all I really want to talk about. I want you to have a strong idea of what statistics is and, a vague idea of what data is. Know the difference between descriptive and inferential statistics, and know the difference between populations and samples, but also how they relate to one another. Basically, that samples come from populations.
Okay, so now we have a basic understanding of descriptive and inferential statistics and statistical analysis, as well as some of the other concepts that are important in doing statistical analysis. So let's look at these concepts in a simple study I conducted several years ago in Alberta. Now, confession up front, I didn't do the statistical analysis. I put together the survey, and I'll explain near the end of the video about that. But I put together the survey, and then someone who actually knows how to do statistics and is proficient in that area actually did the statistical analysis piece, ran it through the machine, and provided me with the statistics that I wanted based on the information that we had gathered. So let's look at this simple study then that I concluded several years ago in Alberta. Probably, gosh, about 12 years ago now. I can't believe that. Anyway, I was on the Gender and Diversity Committee with the ATA, and we had become interested in exploring a persistent question in education. How can we better understand the gender disparities in the teaching profession? We did an extensive literature review and found that the issue was highly complex and that statistics for the gender distribution in teaching remained remarkably stable. Somewhere around 70 to 80% women, it went up and down, depending on the economy, essentially, and 20 to 30% men. So 70-30, somewhere between 70-30 and 80-20. And when I say it's related to the economy, there's a lot of research that suggests that as the economy improves, men tend to move out into other kinds of jobs, professions, and so on. And when the economy falters, then men tend to enter into education in greater numbers. Why that should be exactly is hard to say. There'd have to be more research around that, but there certainly seems to be a pattern that's been very long term, and we can trace it way back into the 20s, 30s, and 40s, for example. I want to add a caveat here that we are talking about male presenting and female presenting teachers, and we did not account for alternative gender representation. And at this point, I am sorry about that, but at the time, that was how almost all surveys were done, as male-female participants. My study took as its population beginning teachers in Alberta. So we were looking at the entire population of beginning teachers in Alberta. And the sample came from beginning teachers attending a conference for beginning teachers. And most of those attending participated in the survey. So we had a group of female beginning teachers in that larger population, and we had male beginning teachers as part of that population as well. And they self-identified on the survey as either male or female. Creswell makes the statement that when you're comparing two or more groups or relate two or more variables, that your analysis can become inferential. So I'll take them at his word, and certainly I was able to make inferences by looking at variables in relation to the two gendered groups, the descriptive information that was gathered within this sample in my study. So using my descriptive data about males and females in teaching in Alberta, for example, how does my population compare to the general percentages for males and females in the wider teaching community? Well, looking at this, it's pretty close. So we have 19% males and 81% females that were a part of our survey group, the group that we were looking at, and that matched the larger population. This was our sample, I'm trying to say. So we have our sample of male and female teachers as compared to the general population of teachers in Alberta. As an aside, at the time of this study, the economy was booming and the number of males was down in relation to the total population. But research, as I've mentioned, tells us that the number of males rises when the economy offers fewer alternatives to males. So we have generally higher numbers of males as compared to other times when it's closer to 70-30. In thinking about this study then, my larger question was, why are there more female than male teachers in Alberta? I chose to tease out some of the aspects of the question, the variables, using a survey in which respondents answered several questions about aspects of that larger question. That survey was based on the large literature review that we had done collectively in the committee. So the question became, what is the career trajectory of male and female teachers in Alberta? How do they compare and contrast? So I used the survey data to tease some of that information out. I've got a population, I've got the sample here, and then the descriptive statistics are here as well. Now, my hypothesis is, based on all of this information, that males enter teaching at different life stages than females. That's my hypothesis. Is that the case? Well, we looked at this question using the time when a decision was made by that individual to become a teacher. And then we looked at the gender distribution. So those the males who decided to become a teacher when they were in elementary school was very small in comparison to the number of teachers, a number of females that made that decision at the elementary school level. So we've got a fairly large population of females who've already decided that they're going to become teachers. And then we have at secondary level, realizing that there's a large group of females that have already made that decision, then we have males and females deciding to become teachers at more or less the same rate, slightly less for males than females, but it's really quite similar, which raises some interesting issues around recruiting and that sort of thing. Should we be doing more recruiting at the secondary level, since there seems to be an interest at the secondary level, or greater interest at secondary level with males than at other times in their life cycle. And then we have when they were doing their undergraduate degree, and it's in some ways it's not surprising. A lot of females have already made the decision to become a teacher and are probably in university preparing for that role. We don't know that, and that would require further research, but that would be an interesting hypothesis to pursue. We have a large percentage of males that are making their decisions at that level. And by the way, the discrepancies in numbers are because probably decisions are made and unmade over time. But here we have a large population of males that are making the decision at the undergraduate level. And why might that be? Well, they may be preparing for other kinds of careers and end up either not liking it when they get into it and decide, well, I can use this information to be a science teacher or whatever. Or they've decided to become a doctor, but don't get the grades, or whatever it happens to be. So here we have then these decisions being made here. Again, more research would need to be made to decide why that would be. And then others, we asked questions that they could fill out in this category, and in almost all cases it was because, in some cases it was because people were waiting for their children to be at a certain age before they actually decided to become a teacher. They became interested in children because they had children and that sort of thing. But for many it was because they went into a job and either the job ended, the opportunities weren't there, they didn't like it, or whatever, or some had prepared to be a teacher but had gone into other jobs to make money quickly so that they could pay off their school debts and that sort of thing, and then went into teaching. So there are various ways. So our hypothesis was partly confirmed, but it needed more information. And this is where mixed methods come in, because oftentimes quantitative data will reveal questions. It raises some interesting questions that can then be pursued further with either more quantitative research or with qualitative research. And that's where we get into mixed methods quite often. Okay, so the question then becomes, well, what if I know nothing about statistics? I certainly fall in that category. It's not that I know nothing, but I know very little. My secret, as I mentioned, you can get somebody to do your statistical analysis. So there's that. But you have to pay them, and in your case that would not work. You have to do all of the work. I didn't take a course in statistics in my undergrad, and a very bad course during my PhD studies that did teach me how to make surveys, but didn't teach me anything about analyzing those surveys or even using the programs that would help me to do that. But I feel that I need at least a general awareness of the processes and the methods and the analysis and so on used in quantitative research. And this module's readings help with that. I need to know some of the most common terms so that I can read a quantitative study and at least understand it enough to make a judgment about its validity, so that I can become a knowledgeable consumer of research, even though I'll never probably do a quantitative study myself, particularly at this point in my life. Because it's necessary as a researcher and as a professional educator as well, since so many policy changes and discussions about education are premised on quantitative studies. And even if your knowledge is limited, it's important to know about and use reliable sources so that you can read a study and trust its conclusions. So even if you don't read the whole methods section of the paper, you can read the conclusions and know what they're talking about, know that they've used good analytical processes and so on. So this is the kind of information that we need in order to be knowledgeable consumers of the research that we're reading, and so that we're not vulnerable to poor research and making decisions based on poor research. So I hope this has helped maybe even a little bit around quantitative research, and I'm looking forward to talking about it more with you during this module. Thanks for your attention.